actually, in 2 seconds, turn the microphone over to Chase Masterson, who's going to introduce what we're doing here. But somebody has to introduce the fabulous Chase Masterson. So that gets to be my job. So Chase, as many of you probably know, was Dabo Girlita in the final 5 seasons of Deep Space Nine. And she's been in Doctor Who Big Finish, and she mentors kids through Homeway Industries. And she, along with me, has been the founder of the Anti-Bullying Coalition. So please give her a big round of applause for all her work. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks so much for coming out. I know that I'm preaching to the choir when I say that this is such an important issue, and it's such a great pleasure to be able to take a stand and to do good things with it. Thank you for coming. We know you have choices at Comic-Con, and I appreciate that you're here. I'm going to keep this really short. Just from our hearts to yours, we want to do everything that we can for kids who are bullied, one at a time or in masses. So help us get the word out on what we're doing. And there are lots of programs that these guys up here are going to tell you about. So I'm going to keep it short and hand it over. These guys are the experts with their hands in the trenches every single day. And let's go. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being a part of this. Anyone who has attended a panel in the past knows the structure I like to use is a very specific question for each panelist. And then, after they answer, then we can open it up to questions from the floor. But this will allow each person to talk about what it is that they do specific to or relevant to the idea of stereotypes or bullying or anything that fills this type of discussion. So I'm going to start off with Ashley Eckstein. Ashley Eckstein, who is known as being Ahsoka Tano on Star Wars The Clone Wars, although that's no longer being produced. We all remember and loved her in it, and she's moving on to awesome new projects. But one of the things that I specifically want to talk about here is her work is her universe. Raise your hand if you've heard of her universe. Ashley, geek girls are often stereotyped as hot or not, with a narrowly defined version of beauty. In your web store for her universe, you use models of all sizes to show off your Star Wars and geek girl clothing, and you create a safe place for girls and women to be who they are, without the excess expectations of societal norms. In a time when there is enormous social pressure on girls in particular to look a certain way, not just in everyday life, but especially in the world of Comic-Cons and cosplay, how will you continue to do the work of breaking down body stereotypes for geek girls?
Wow. It's definitely a big topic, and it's something that's very, very important to us. It is something that we started to do recently. We started to offer more plus sizes on our website and in retail, and definitely more at cons. But up until just about 2 months ago, I was the only model on our website, kind of because we're a small company and I'm a cheap model. Because I was here for free. But we had so many amazing girls that actually offered their time to come be plus-size models for us, because even though we offered the sizes, you know, I know as a girl, I want to see how it looks on somebody else my own size. And so we had so many amazing girls offer their time to be our models, and the response was overwhelming. Just a positive response. And I think, sorry, there's so many directions that this answer can go. So, but we just try so hard to make it a community for all girls, and to set the standard, you know, from day one, that it needed to be a positive environment. If you didn't have something positive to say, please don't come and carry a conversation in our community. And I feel like because we set that standard from day one we said this is a company where girls can step into the spotlight. It's a safe environment where girls, their voices can be heard. And I feel like because we started that way, everyone listened. And it's an environment for all ages. And we still, last year we started Year of the Fangirl, where we nominated a Fangirl of the Day every single day, and we told her story. story about who she was. This was the chance for that girl to, you know, literally the spotlight to shine right on her. And the response was incredible. Again, we wanted to nominate a girl every single day for the rest of the year. We got over 900 nominations. So we're going to continue to nominate girls every single day. And what I would just recommend is people just come and check out the girl that we nominate. We post it on our blog, on heruniverse.com, but we post it on Facebook and on Twitter as well. And what people don't realize, a lot of people read it, but they don't comment. And the girl who's the fangirl of the day, you'd be so surprised how far a comment goes. Like, good for you. Congratulations. You look beautiful in that photo. And that, I don't think people realize what kind words, especially to a fangirl, because for so long fangirls weren't accepted. So just welcoming and kind words to fangirls to make them feel like a part of this community can go beyond just one day.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. My second question is for Brad Bell. He's a producer, writer, comic book author. He's best known for Husbands. In Husbands, you sought to create a show to prove that there was an audience for your content, not just to sell the show. Your idea was to make a new sitcom for the marriage equality age. One of the comments I saw online and have seen more than once is, I don't have a problem with gays on TV, but if they could just be normal and not shove being gay in my face. Can you talk about how to respond to this narrow idea of normal gay versus not normal gay?
Yeah, just shove more gay in their face. Yeah, well, it's a conversation that, yeah, is had culturally and in the arts and among the gay communities. This sort of idea of, you know, what kind of gay is acceptable to present to the mainstream in order to gain equality or acceptance. And the point of our show is, well, there's a lot, but one of the conversations we like to have and the points I want to make is that what makes you gay is exclusively having sex with members of the same sex. And that's it. Like, outside of that, nothing defines you as gay. So if you're, you know, with Bubba the trucker with a long beard and a beer belly and you exclusively have sex with men, well then great, you know, good for you, you're gay. And there's really nothing outside of that. And then that also in turn affects heterosexual men. You know, there are a lot of straight men that can't express themselves because it might look gay, right? So if like a man really loves flowers or interior decorating or whatever it might be, but he is heterosexual, then he should be allowed to be that without, you know, placing assumptions on him. So we wanted to have that conversation because it's freeing. I think it's liberating for both gay men and heterosexual men, and I think that sort of awareness of other people will really help throughout society with women and all minorities, because when you allow people to just be who they are, then they don't feel like they need to turn around and impress some other group because they feel impressed. So that's how we approach it.
Fabulous. Thank you for that. Our third question will go to Jane Espenson, who is producer and writer. She's done Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Warehouse 13, Once Upon a Time, and of course Husbands with Brad Bell. Jane, there's a major imbalance in the number of male versus female writers and characters in the entertainment industry. You have achieved a much desired success. Do you think showrunners are more likely to hire female writers if A, we promote women as uniquely able to write about the female point of view, or B, we remove gender from the table altogether and promote a writer as simply a writer who can empathize with all points of view in the hopes of a more natural gender balance?
B. Absolutely. I think this is a mistake that's often made, is you sort of go, oh, there's too few women writers, people aren't seeing what women have to offer. Well, let's talk about what women writers can offer. We can give the emotional point of view, we can, make characters that are maybe less prone to blow someone's head off and more likely to sit down and negotiate. And if you've got women characters and you've got no women writers writing for them, shame on you. I get why that's an impulse that makes sense, but in fact it works against you. Because if you start saying you need women to write women characters, well, then if there's a show with no women, I guess it's all right to have no women writers. And does that mean women can't write male characters? Like, you end up in some bad logical dead ends. And if you believe that talent is distributed equally among all people on Earth, then you're going to have just as many talented women out there as there are men. And writing is about being a chameleon. It's about being able to put yourself in the heads of any character you're writing for. Any good writer can do that. Let's not start spreading this falsehood that they can't. And let's just, if we get more women out there in the submission piles, and we get more women at the lower ranks, then you're going to get more women showrunners. We're getting more and more. And then those women will get hired. And they will get hired because they're good writers, not because, oh, we need someone to write for Sally, the female waitress in our show.
Thank you. Chase Masterson. Our next question goes to Anthony Breznican. He's a reporter on Hollywood for Entertainment Weekly and a new author of a novel called Brutal Youth. And Anthony, do you prefer Anthony or Tony?
Anthony.
All right. Anthony.
And Tony never stuck.
In your new novel, Brutal Youth, you create multifaceted characters who switch places between being targeted and acting like the bullies themselves. This is the truth. Even the bad guys have often experienced pain, which can make them sympathetic. And while it does not make their acts of revenge acceptable, it often makes them understandable. Do you think there's another way for a victim to become empowered and respected, other than by lashing out and hurting the aggressor? I'm thinking somewhat of Hannah's character.
I wrote this novel. It's called Brutal Youth, and it's one I've been working on for many years. And a lot of writing doesn't take place actually at the keyboard. It's driving around or taking a shower or going for a walk. You know, you're just thinking. I'm sure you guys are the same way. You're just thinking about these things, and these are themes and ideas that some of them are true stories that happened to me and some to other people. And I wanted to write this story set at a crumbling Catholic school in Western Pennsylvania, which is where I went to high school, and it's a dumping ground for misfits and delinquents who are too dangerous for public schools, and some unlucky people end up thrown in with them. And I wanted to explore the idea of what makes. I'm an optimist, and I believe most people are born good. I'm a pessimist because I don't think they always stay that way. And I'm fascinated by this idea of what makes someone turn. Why there's somebody not so great people out there, and what happened to them? Do you ever feel that way? What happened to you to make you so hard? And I think we all have to develop a kind of armor as we go through life. You can't fall down every hit you take because you'll never get up again. But that armor can go so deep that it hardens you. And so your question was about how do you not go bad? How do you not become the thing that you dislike? And I think this is a real danger. And in my story, it's about newcomers at this school who are trying to survive. And some of them are more desperate than others, and some of them do very noble things, and some of them do very not so noble things, cruel things. And some of them are just so desperate to be protected that they become the bad guy because they feel they need to. It's a survival tactic. If there's somebody a little bit lower than you on the totem pole, then you don't have to be that piece that goes into the ground to keep the totem pole up. You can. There are some people who will step on you just to get a little higher on the ladder, and some people who reach down with a helping hand, and even if it means maybe they have to come down a little bit. But what's the difference between them? I don't know the answer. I tried to explore that in a lot of different ways, and it's a very sad book. I think it's a tragedy. I thought it was a dark comedy when I was writing it, but my wife read it and was like, no, it's not. But I think the solution is is to think about what it means to be a bystander, right? We've all been pushed around and picked on, and then you get a little bigger or stronger or smarter or cleverer and figure out ways to protect yourself. But one of the best ways is to have a friend, right? Somebody's like, stop picking on her, lay off. And we were just talking about younger kids are afraid to do that because they know if I do that, then they're gonna pick on me. So I'm gonna just sit quietly, let this happen. You know what? The sad thing is, that's true. You will be the next target. But I think and that's why it's a tragedy, is that I think that there's victory in just having stood up for someone. And if enough people do that, then suddenly you're not so alone. You know, the best way to make a friend is to be a friend. And if you can stand up and do the right thing for somebody else, that person may do it for you. And that, I think, is it's a hard but a true lesson.
Thank you. Anthony Breznican. Speaking to what you're talking about, one of the things that can help kids switch from a bystander to a witness or an ally is to identify a couple sympathetic other friends who could act as allies with them. And then, since bullying happens over and over, you have time to prepare. You could say to your couple friends, next time we see that, if I say something, will you guys say something too? And it's a little less scary. So that's a great way to deal with being a bystander.
Weren't there also some steps that were like less than standing up to the bully? That were like,
Yes.
you go tell an adult to not.
Yes.
Those were really...
I actually have what I call a ladder approach for kids, where the top rung of the ladder might be directly confronting the bully, saying, stop, you're being an a-hole. But the next step down might be to turn and instead of confront the bully, actually throw your support to the target. So say, hey, I like this kid, he or she's okay. If you can't do that, you take the next step down. And that might be not saying anything in the moment if you feel too frightened, but send a text later to the target, I'm thinking of you. If that's too scary for you, take the next step down your ladder, document what happened, and give it to a teacher or a principal because evidence needs to be corroborated. So there's a whole ladder of approaches, and any step you take, you're acting as a witness or an ally and not a bystander. So thank you, Jane, for bringing up the idea of more than one step.
One thing to consider though is like, you say talk to a teacher or talk to a parent. People who are often picked on the most are the ones who are the most vulnerable. They're the ones who don't maybe have such a great parent. Maybe they get beaten up and pushed around at home too. You know what? Frankly, just because you're in charge of something doesn't mean that you're a good person. There are plenty of teachers out there that I would never have trusted at the time. And sometimes, when they're seeing somebody singled out by a teacher, it's going to make an example out of you. And I was very blessed. I had a good friend when I was in school who, he was always in trouble because he'd stand up for anybody. And then if you were the teacher, he would provoke, he would draw the fire away. And, I just think it's worth noting that sometimes you don't always have an option of somebody, a higher power.
You don't. But it's good to find supporters where you can, or allies. Going further into the psychology of the bad guy, I'm going to introduce our panelist, Andrea Letamendi, Drea, as she's known, who is a psychologist. She's best known for her psychology of Batman and writes Under the Mask. Is it Under the Mask or Behind the Mask? Behind the Mask. Drea, I'd like you to talk about this impact of bullying on people psychologically. So when we've got a kid who's being bullied again and again at school in 6th grade and 8th grade, what happens to that kid when he or she becomes an adult, even after the bullying has stopped and this person's now just trying to function in the workforce? What's going on in their brain?
Yeah, well first, I'm a psychologist and educator at a mental health agency in Los Angeles, and we see over 10,000 kids a year. We have over 500 therapists who see them. And so we see bullying all the time. We encounter, not a day goes by that we don't encounter a youth who has a story of bullying. And so one thing that I've struggled with is this idea that bullying is, being picked on is like, rite of passage, or it's just normal, or get over it, everyone goes through this. Being hospitalized shouldn't be something that's a rite of passage. Being on medications when you're 10 years old, that shouldn't be something that you should expect your child to go through. So I think that an important part of my role is to provide education and information to families about the impact of bullying at the psychological level as well as the neurobiological level. that when you have what Carrie's describing as sort of repeated harassment and bullying, there are actual brain functions and structures that are affected by that. And so youth, as they're, our brains are developing well into our early 20s, and so if you can imagine the brain of a youngster who's being picked on and bullied, there are actual structural changes that lead to then things like cognitive difficulties, information processing biases. In plain non-Vulcan English, what that means is that their brain kind of preps them. You've heard the thing like people say the body keeps score or the body keeps count. They actually begin to expect bullying. They begin to expect being treated badly. Their brain is almost now wired to have an expectation of being put down. And so when they are encountering what we call like neutral situations or neutral kind of like social interactions, a kid coming up to them and saying hello, for instance, they might interpret that ambiguous situation as being threatening. And then there might be, some kind of emotional reaction or incident. And, all in all, it's a very, it's a deeper psychological process and neurobiological process that happens. And so it's really important to kind of remember that with each of these incidents, there can be a real impact to that.
Thank you. Andrea Letamendi. In entertainment and stories, often the writers of stories rely on stereotypes for comic, for comedy, for tension. I thought about it when I was watching one of the Avengers movies, and after Loki did all this horrible stuff and killed all these people, someone mentioned to Thor, "That's your brother," and he said he's adopted. And as an adoptive mother, I picked up on that, and of course there was a big laugh in the theater. But it was like playing right into a certain stereotypes. And so for my next question is for Tina Malka, who is the Associate Director of the Anti-Defamation League of San Diego. Tina, free speech is an important part of creative expression. And people who attend Comic-Con are familiar with storylines that can be edgy or provocative, often because they rely on stereotypes. How can we write about controversial topics and even incorporate stereotypes without contributing to a climate of hate?
That's a big question. All right, so the Anti-Defamation League is a 101-year-old civil rights organization, and we're firm supporters of free speech. But to speak to what Brad was talking about what sometimes we have sort of single vision of what we think this category is like. And there was I can't recall his name, it was a columnist in, I believe, the LA Times, who said that in The Simpsons, if that was the only portrayal of white men in media, I think most white men would have a problem with that, right? They'd go, wait a second, it's a little broader category than, Bart and The Simpsons. And so for us, it's really a question of context when you're writing stories. It's about what kind of context you create around a character. So you have a broad context. So if we're talking about a character from the LGBT community, we're talking about Latina or Asian or female, we want to create a really broad context around that so you can have a really true vision of all the diversity that's out there. And in fact, and just to play on what Anthony was talking about, the whole idea, we talk about the connection between identity and bias, and how when you have that connection sometimes, that's when people act out on these negative stereotypes. And we want to move people from the role of being a bystander and watching bullying take place to a role of being an ally, where you can stand up for other people. And that's equally true in writing and what people create in the visions they have in television and film.
Thank you very, very much, Tina Malka. Continuing on the ideas of bias and making changes in the world, we have Bettina Hausman here, President of the United Nations Association of the USA San Diego chapter. The United Nations Association has stated that LGBT rights is one of the most important human rights topics of our generation. The UN has created its first ever resolution on sexual orientation and gender discrimination. How can everyday citizens like those of us here help advance the human rights work in this area? Bettina.
Well, thank you. you have spoken about how really education is a crucial part of to combat any discrimination, because anti-bullying is nothing but discrimination, and the forms are different, not only verbal, not only physical. Now they even have cyberspace discrimination or bullying. So it really goes not only to education on a level from in society, but also it goes to the point that we are talking, we have to put in frameworks in schools, national frameworks, to really have a network or a policy that tells us what to do, what is bullying, what is discrimination, and how do we combat it in schools and in society in particular. So we have to, from the grassroots level, we have each other, as we have spoken about, that to stand up to another, to say this is not cool, and I'm helping you to stand up to somebody. And on the other hand, we have to have the framework in place. So with, for example, the UNESCO has put in place a framework particular for the protection of the rights of the child, which means education for all. And there, particularly in the anti-bullying that we are discussing today, this takes place as it is part of the Convention on the Right of the Child, as it really impacts education. When children go to schools, they're afraid of going to schools, they're not learning correctly. So it all impacts, and then in the bigger picture, it impacts society, how we, our citizens at the end, how they grow up to be a good citizen or contribute to society. So as we learned with the LGBT community, making noise constantly from the grassroots level makes a difference. Meaning if we are pushing from each single neighbor, from parent, if we're pushing for this topic far enough, if we go to our representatives to push for these topics that are near and dear to our hearts, it will make a difference, it will change. So in other words, with the anti-bullying campaign, we need to stand up, we need to go to our representatives and Congress people to make sure that they know this is on the bill. And for example, one of the action items that is currently is the anti-discrimination for the disability. So the huge disability act, because children that are disabled are being picked on as well. And currently in the Senate, it already went through the Senate, but it needs to get to the next step. And in August, when the recess is, I hope you're going to go and talk to your congressperson, to your representative, to ensure you understand they should vote yes on the Convention on the Disability Act. Meaning that really will protect the children that are disabled in terms of discrimination that goes back to the bullying as well. So that is what I think we can do as citizens, really making sure that our representatives know we're here, we want to do this, we see that there's a need, and now it's up to you to make the change.
Thank you. Thank you, Bettina Hassler. My final question for the panel is for our friend Alice Cahn. She's the Vice President of Social Responsibility for Cartoon Network. I saved Alice's question for last because it brings together a couple ideas that have been brought up with other members of our panel. And that's the idea of, who sets what's normal, who sets what isn't, what does an audience want versus what do we give them. For example, Ashley Eckstein noticed that girls were looking for Star Wars clothing that they didn't just have to buy in the boys section of Target. And so she created a company that provided that missing merchandise. Brad Bell and Jane Espenson came up with an idea, let's write a show about marriage equality. Maybe it wasn't initially thought of by the industry as something that would sell, but they showed there was an audience for it. So here's my question. Recently, another executive, not Alice, from Cartoon Network went on record saying, girls don't buy our toys, so we don't want too many of them watching our network. They came out saying they were not going to make shows for girls. How can we change that attitude? Because it is a self-fulfilling prophecy at times, and it can be detrimental to the ability of boys and girls to play together and relate to each other. What role does social
responsibility play in Cartoon Network's programming choices as it relates to marketing to both boys and girls?
I'm sorry, Alice wasn't able to join us today.
I know, I asked hard questions. I did warn Alice ahead of the time.
Just so no one at Cartoon Network would say girls don't watch our shows. So I think the comment, just to put everything in context to Dean.
Dean is the man who made
The
the
crew writer, and one I respect and have worked with for a good many years. No, everyone's entitled to their opinion. And we all feel very, for the creators in the room, the stories that we create, those are our children, and we feel very protective of that. And sometimes we love those stories and projects that don't connect with other audiences, even more than we do the stories that do connect with other audiences. Cartoon Network is about great storytelling, great characters, and great animation. We work very closely with writers, animators, showrunners to make sure they know exactly who young people are. We would be foolish to ignore 50% of the audience. So that in my work with writers, in my work with folks at Cartoon Network Studios, what I've been doing for the last 5 years is really looking at developmental research that we do and others, and really exploring who kids are today, rather than who writers may remember they were when they were 12 or 8. Remember, our audience is sort of 2nd grade through about 6th grade. Our focus is really both through our shows and specifically with our Stop Bullying, Speak Up campaign. It's about giving kids the confidence and the competence to speak up when they see somebody get picked up. And what I loved about research that generated this campaign, which was about 6 years ago, was when you talk to kids, 85% of our kids, it's a nationally representative survey, wasn't so much that they were getting picked on. 85% of kids, and I would imagine if I asked the question in this room, I'd get the same answer, said, it's not so much that I'm getting bullied, but I see my friend get picked on, and I didn't do anything, and I felt really bad. Show me what to do when I see my friend get picked on. So our focus and our work with developmental psychologists, our work with Carrie, our work with Roz Wiseman, our work with other great writers on this topic, is really to take that realm of social emotional skills, those things that kids really need to know to be kind, good people, and put content on the platform. How do we imbue our stories and our characters with those goals, with those objectives? I have to say, one of the projects I am most proud of, I don't know if you've seen folks walking around with our new fall promotional campaign. We've got 6 new posters out, each of them for some of our new fall shows. The reason I'm so proud of the campaign is that every single one of those slogans imbues social emotional learning at its finest, and I had absolutely nothing to do with the creation of the campaign. So what I really love about our brand and about the creatives that we work with is that those goals have become part of our brand. And I just want to thank Chase and Carrie. This is the 2nd year we've done this in San Diego. We did it in New York. Our industry really can create a change. The entertainment media has the power to inspire and motivate people to change their behaviors and learn new behaviors. So for everyone sitting on this panel, I know it's important, for everyone sitting in this audience, you have a role to play in helping our industry survive. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Network executives would be willing to put themselves in a situation to talk about tough questions. And actually, everyone up here, these aren't easy questions because it's important to talk about the issues under the issues. So I'm just so appreciative that everyone was willing to come up here and explore these. We'd like to open it up. I know there's not a lot of time, but there is time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience for someone on the panel. Want me to bring the mic to you?
I think that does. I think that works. try.
Me? Yeah. Okay, I guess my question would be for Julia.
Can you speak up?
I guess my question is for Julia, since she's a psychologist. I'm a special education teacher. I have 2 children on autism spectrum disorder. One has Asperger's, and he's bullied a lot. How would you deal with that? Because he said it changes the way they think, where he's like always on guard, and he is. But with the autism added in, how would you deal with it, like as a parent?
Wow, that's a really great question, and we encounter this a lot at our agency with families and caregivers really wanting to be able to support and help their kids, especially the ones. Now, I feel like a lot of us have stories of being bullied, and when you have additional characteristics about yourself, like being on the spectrum, for instance, unfortunately that invites additional incidents and additional bullying experiences, and I think that unfortunately there isn't one answer to how we can just improve that for an individual child. But I'll say a couple of things. One is that I think that Carrie's book is extremely relevant here because there are very, very concrete, straightforward steps in helping kids, and your child may fit into this as far as being able to really comprehend, just from the basics of like, what is bullying? How do I identify it? What does that feel like? How do I know that it's not just kind of normal social interaction versus real actual harassment and bullying? And then in the book there are, again, very concrete, specific steps that he or she can practice. And I said practice because it's not like you get a series of exercises and suddenly you're not bullied anymore. But that's how mental health works for us. That we try to infuse skills. And this fits really nicely in with some parent management techniques, with some social skills, where we can really instill empowerment and confidence with the practice.
I'd like to add one other thing. It's very important that the burden of making the bullying stop not be placed solely on your child or the child who is being targeted, because our society tends to victim blame. So they might say, oh, well, the answer is social skills, which is one of the components of the answer, but your kid's school also needs to be doing a better job of training the other kids on how to react. Teaching them, for example, if your child is talking loudly and excessively about Halo or something over and over and it's annoying another kid, the school needs to teach the other kid how to say, let's talk about Halo for 5 minutes, but then I'd like to change subjects and get a chance to go talk to someone else. Or teach the other kids how to say about your kid if he's standing too close. You're standing a little close to me, as opposed to saying, get out of my effing face, you loser. So it's not just the role of your child, it's also the role of the surroundings to teach people how to treat him respectfully. Next question.
Well, as a victim myself of bullying, I know that it can be hard to. The principals and the teachers didn't really help at all. They did nothing at all. So, how do you expect someone who is being bullied to be helped when nobody will help them? Nobody helped me. I had no friends.
How are they supposed to react?
I know the answer, but if someone else on the panel wants to.
Yeah,
Okay, Brett.
I grew up super gay in Texas. Super. And I would say, like, I'm having an issue, like, what's that guy's name? And I'm going to report him. And I remember a science teacher going, sit down. Like, don't interrupt class right now with whatever problem you're having. So I totally get it, because nobody gave a shit about the gay kid in Texas. Sorry, you look under 18. I'm sorry. But I get it. And I turned out so well. And this is like a difficult thing to get to because it takes a lot of, inner strength, right? But it ultimately can be a really good and empowering thing because what you can learn right now is that your strength doesn't come from any outside source. And obviously it's really difficult to be in that position, and if you are in a position where you are physically in danger of being hurt, then that's something else altogether. But if we're talking about the kind of bullying that is verbal, or maybe they're stealing your backpack and like pouring soda in it or something, then my way of dealing with it was to take their power away by just accepting it and saying like, okay, did you feel like you had to do that? Gosh, I feel really bad for you. That's really a shame. You must feel really bad inside that you need to make me feel bad all the time. I'll pray for you. Whatever it is, you can take it away by not being, maybe you are internally affected, but really wrapping your mind around the idea that a person acting that way is in pain. And that's why they're doing that to you. So when you see someone bullying you, and when they're saying mean things to you, really try and get into a state of mind where you see that this is a person hurting really bad, and that's really sad, and express that to them. Like, I'm really sorry you feel like you have to do this. You're a nice guy, you don't have to do this, And turning it around on them, and letting them know that you're the bigger person because you see what's going on, and that it's not going to affect you. It's not going to make you upset. It's these words that they're using aren't like, they can say whatever they want. They can say horrible things. They're not true. They're just said with the intent to hurt you. And as long as you don't let them do that, after a while they just kind of get bored. It's like they're trying to get a kid to play with them in some weird way, and if you just don't, then they finally stop. And I know that's difficult because I'm basically saying, yeah, you're on your own, like, better pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But if you are in that situation and you can really work on that, you will be so much further in life than most people. And by the time you get into your 20s, when you've got, really big life things that could potentially throw you or keep you down, you've got an inner strength, you've got a thick skin, and you spent years developing it. So I hope that helps in some way.
I think that Tina Malgasso from the ADL would like to address your comments.
I just want to add on to that. One of the side effects is adults sometimes don't behave the way they wish they did, especially teachers and educators. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time in faculty ADL, we've trained millions of teachers, really about recognizing their own bias and how to effectively advocate for kids and also effectively intervene where they, you were saying about saying, oh, be quiet, we don't want to hear your complaints. That's sort of a secondary bullying by your teacher in front of the bully, which is not healthy.
It condones it.
It condones it, absolutely.
It
If
makes you feel like you deserve it.
absolutely, especially the adult, like the adults reinforcing it. I can tell you that if after we're done, come up to me and looking at what school you're in, we go and we have grant-funded programming available to go into schools and to educate teachers about bias, recognizing their own bias, having to confront that bias, and realizing that they need to, whatever biases they have, and check at the door when they come into a classroom. That the classroom is supposed to be a safe place for the students, from the other students in the room, but also from the teachers and administrators of the school. It needs to be a safe place. So we try to create that through the education we do. So please come up to me afterwards and we find your school and work something out.
Love husbands. Anthony, you're one of my favorite writers at EW. And Ashley, love your clothes.
I want to say one more thing to, what's your name, Emily? Emily, when you make a report of bullying to your school and things don't get better, it means one of two things is going on. And anyone here should know this so that if you have to approach schools, you understand this. It means either, A, the school from the top down either doesn't care about bullying or doesn't have an anti-bullying philosophy. Even if they have what they call an anti-bullying policy, if it's not implemented faithfully, it means crap. So it means either A, they don't have it, or if they do have it and they truly do care, and the kids are still not listening, it means that that school does not have a good connection between the adults of the school and the kids. It's one of the two. If you have good adults modeling the right behaviors, and those adults are connected to the students, and the students care about what those adults think, then you will have a healthy environment in your school. So you have to figure out which one it is, so that we as adults who come in to work with schools can help your school work on which thing. Do they need to grow their relationship with their students, or do they need to get their head around what it means to be anti-bullying, or both?
Can I say something to you? Thanks for saying you like my writing. It's nice of you.
Yeah.
I'm so moved by you going up to the microphone. It's scary to get up in front of a bunch of people, and I can feel that. You have tears in your eyes, and here you are. You're reaching out for help, and I hope you get some. It's damn scary when you're there, and there's no one to turn to. And so I wrote this book, and I don't know if it's good or not, but I hope it is. But the one, people can like it or not, but the one criticism I see, because I read every single review, is, well, this wouldn't happen. Somebody would step in, an adult would step in. And I've heard from real people so often, like, that's just not true. Like, teachers will make an excuse, or it's a pain to deal with this, or they're friends with the parents of the kids who are doing it. Donate money to the school. There are a million different reasons why. And I think what you said about, all the different things that are wrong with the structure of the school, that's true, but that's not really something that she can change on her own. Maybe you can change that, It's nice that and work together. But I'm not a psychologist, I'm just a guy who likes stories, but one thing I know for sure that you can do for yourself is if you see somebody else, you're not alone. You may feel like you're alone. There are other kids out there, boys and girls your age, who feel the same way, who are getting the same lack of protection. And if you ever see one of them in trouble, be a friend to that person, because you will make a friend for life. And suddenly, you've been a little brave, and maybe the world's not so scary once you do that. And it's easier, I think, to stand up for somebody else when you're hurting as bad as you are, than it is to stand up for yourself. Because you do, you start to think, maybe I deserve this, maybe I have this coming. You don't. Anybody can tell you that. But if you tell that to somebody else, you stick up for them or stick your neck out, take on some of that heat, you've made a friend and you're really not alone.
Thank you so much. I think that all of these guys just heroically really touched on the most important themes that we can talk about at a Comic-Con. Thank you, yes, for reaching out. That's one of our strongest themes. Reach out when you need it, because you're not alone, and there is help. And all of these people are making a huge difference. I just want to say, this whole gathering, Comic-Con is about people and characters who are doing extraordinary things to make the world a better place. And wrapping up Comic-Con, I just want to say that you have that extraordinary power to reach out and, like Ashley said earlier, to just give a warm smile or say hello, do something to let somebody know that they're not alone. Like Brad was saying, reach across, it's not hard. We need to get used to the fact that we live in a tough world and we make a difference. These guys are a hand-picked special ops kind of group of people who are making amazing entertainment and making a strong difference, making the world a better place with their voices. So I just want to say huge thanks to these guys, to Brad Bell and Jane Espenson from Husbands, Anthony Breznican, Harper Collins Bullied, Eckstein from Freebies, Andrea Letamendi, Alex Cahn, Cartoon Governor, Tina Malco, the Anti-Defamation League, and making their debut, the United Nations Association, their first appearance at a Comic-Con. One more thing, our thing here is we all love superheroes, why not be one? So go do whatever it is you do.